Hello and welcome everyone. If this is your first time here, welcome to our Beyond the Solar series. If you have been here before, welcome back. Really excited to connect with everybody today. I'm super excited to be able to come back and add some value, be able to give some insight, and obviously empower you when it comes to making a decision to how you are going to power your home. So, if you don't know me, my name is Will Zapata with Apollo Energy. I've had the pleasure of helping families convert over into solar power for nearly a decade now. I've had the opportunity to work in California, Texas, Florida, here in the Northeast, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Maine. And basically, I got into the industry in order to allow myself to have freedom. I wanted to be able to live a free life. I wanted to be able to provide something that was going to free people up from the constraints of the utility company. And I wanted everyone to be able to plug into the sun, which is the most abundant source of energy. So, welcome everyone. Really happy to have everybody here and also to be back. Now, for today's topic, we are going to talk about something that's very important, especially with some of the changes that's been happening here in the solar industry. We had a new, basically a new law get introduced, passed by the House of Representatives. We don't know if that is going to change what happens in the solar industry, but regardless of what happens, you as tuning in and being part of our team, you're still going to be able to inform and empower yourself with the right information, so that way you can make the best decision for you and your family, right? So what this is about, this series, or today what we're going to be talking about, is what are some of the solar scams or even red flags to avoid in 2025, especially with some of the main or some of the big changes that's happening with the new administration. Again, remember team, regardless of what happens, solar is still going to be a great opportunity and a better alternative to the utility company. As electric rates goes up, the cost of installing solar will go down, which means you're going to be able to see benefits regardless of whatever happens, in DC, right? Can't control what happens, but you can control where you get your power, how you protect your family, and how you protect yourself from the rising cost of electricity. So to start off with, let's get into our main discussion when it comes to what are some of the red flags that you can avoid when it comes to solar in 2025, right? And just in general. And the main thing that we tend to see a lot of is like this claim that is like a no cost solar, right? I can't tell you how cringy it is when I see people make these absurd claims as to how solar works, and it just confuses a lot of people. And unfortunately, with so much information, we don't end up making the best decision for our homes or a decision at all, right? So we stick with what we know, which is the utility company, which is not always the worst thing, but obviously that means that you're going to be tied into the grid and you're going to be dependent on other people in order to power your home and protect your family from the cost of electricity rising. So now typically what we'll see, on social media, or the way that it is explained if somebody has came to your door, is that solar is totally free, that you don't have to pay anything for it. And that's not necessarily true. There's a lot of things that are being missed when you're proclaiming that solar is a free thing. Now, the best way to explain it is that you have a few options when it comes to how you purchase your electricity, right? And let's start off with a disclaimer, guys. Nothing in life is free, right? So if somebody's trying to tell you, well, solar is free, you don't have to pay for anything, you should already start to kind of, have a light bulb in your head and be like, this sounds too good to be true, which typically means it is, right? Now, the way that it works when it comes to solar is that you may have an option where you don't have to pay any upfront cost, which means that as long as you're the homeowner, you get a good amount of sun exposure, and you have a decent credit standing of 650 or above, you might be able to go with a PPA, which is a power purchase agreement. This allows you to essentially buy the power from the solar at a discounted rate, right? You don't have to pay any money up front. You don't have to put any down payment when it comes to the installation. As long as you get good sun exposure, you're the homeowner, and a credit standing of 650 or above, you have the opportunity to buy the power directly from the solar at a much discounted rate, and then protect yourself from those rates increasing at the same rate as the utility company. The other option is that you can finance it, right? So technically, you're not having to pay anything out of pocket in order to get the project done. You can finance the system, right? Depending on where you fall as far as your credit worthiness, you may be able to qualify for a 3.99% interest rate, and I've seen it go as high as 10 and 12% interest rate, depending on how you want to control the total cost of your system. Now, if you decide to go that route, there is currently, up until we see any changes, a 30% tax credit that the federal government allows you to utilize in order to bring down the cost of solar. With that 30% tax credit, the whole goal is that if you financed it, pay that back to the finance company. That way it keeps your electric rate or your solar rate at a fixed cost, okay? The other option is obviously is cash, right? Now, obviously, when you have to pay for something up front, right, it doesn't necessarily come off as free, right? Which we already said solar is not. But what you have the opportunity to do is that you don't have to pay the financiers in order to finance solar. And then on top of that, all the power that your system generates gets automatically deducted from the cost from the utility company. So by you owning your system outright, just like you owning anything, you don't have to make a payment to either the finance company or, let's say, the PPA company that's allowing you to purchase the power directly from the solar. Now, here are some of the things that you want to ask to figure out what program are you being advised about. What options are being presented to you. Is okay. The first one is who owns the system. Now, typically, depending on what program you qualify for, this can be a variety of ways, right? Either you can have a PPA, which the PPA company owns the system. Typically, when that happens, you're utilizing your roof space to buy the power from the solar at a discounted rate. And then they take care of all the maintenance and warranty and making sure that everything is good. And typically, most installers doing the installation will give you a 5 to 10 year warranty on your roof, right? So in that case, the PPA company or the power purchase agreement company or the leasing company, you might hear those words, they're the ones that own the system. Now, the other question you want to ask is, what is the total cost over time, right? Because remember, this isn't just something that you're going to see, you're going to see the savings right away. This isn't something that is like costing $100, $200, right? This is thousands of dollars that you're investing into your future, your family's future, right? And you want to make sure that you understand what is the total cost of my solar system. So make sure to ask that question, right? Make sure that if you're doing a PPA with an escalator, take into account how much are you paying for it. Sometimes you can do a power purchase agreement with no escalator. I personally love that option, locking in your rates today and protecting yourself tomorrow, right? If you're going to finance the system, go ahead and make sure that you read the truth in lending form, understanding what is the total cost of your system, especially if you plan on either not utilizing the 30% or you plan on delaying that, right? Very important. Now, if you do have the opportunity to purchase cash, typically you are going to see about a 35% or more savings on the total cost. And that's just with anything. If you don't have to pay the bank in order for you to go solar, that means you're able to pocket the money that you would have paid to them in interest and in fees, and you get to automatically keep that for yourself. Again, speeding the process to freeing yourself from the utility company. Okay. Now, what happens if you move is a very important question. On average, most American families are moving anywhere between, let's say, they're moving, every 7 to 8 years, give or take, is when we'll see that, most people are going to be moving, right? Now, what you want to do, again, be clear on the program that you have, right? You want to go ahead and make sure that it's transferable. Typically, the way that it works, if you have a power purchase agreement, right, you can transfer over the contract to the next party, right? They're just going to pick up where you left off. If you decided to finance the system, what's going to happen is that you're going to basically either they can purchase the system alongside with the house, or you can include the total cost of the system, and basically the new homeowner will be able to get the system already paid off. Obviously, it's included in the total price of the house, but everything is typically going to be transferable. Now, I want to take the time here to read a comment. I see here it says, if the homeowner said, I need a new roof before I put on solar. here is going to be my recommendation for that, right? If you're thinking that you need a new roof, well, there's a few things that you can go about, right? You can say, hey, I'm going to do my roof before I do solar. Or what a lot of people will do now is that you can package your re-roof and the solar as one project. And if you decide to, let's say, pay cash or finance the system, right, you're able to basically get a 30% tax credit off the entire project. The way that it typically works with the federal government, if you need a re-roof and you're able to lock it in with solar, they're going to see as the total cost of the project, and you can also take advantage of the tax credit when it comes to you doing the re-roof for your home. So great question. Thank you so much for that, Emron. Great question. Now, the next thing that you want to go into, the point number 2 is, it's a huge red flag, which is probably obvious, but hey, any high pressure sales tactics. If you're finding that somebody is really trying to hammer you to sign in today, if they're promising you that, hey, you need to lock it in today, that they can't promise anything, that should be a sign that you need to stay back or maybe take a step back from it, right? It doesn't mean that you have to necessarily stop looking into solar, but if somebody's really pressuring you and telling you like, hey, you got to sign today, you got to do this now, you can totally feel free to walk away, right? At the end of the day, it is your home. You're the one that is going to be in charge of how you get to power your house, right? So please, if there's anybody trying to do any high pressure sales tactics, take an opportunity to walk back and just, hey, maybe that's not the person for you, right? You want to make sure that you can stay as well informed as you can. Now, just to kind of caveat to that, as I mentioned, with the new administration, there is the possibility that there might be some changes to the tax code. They may be removing the 30% incentive. They may not. The whole point is that you don't want to panic. You want to just empower yourself by staying informed, staying up to date, and ultimately making the best decision for you and your family. The third point, or the third red flag, right? A lack of transparency, right? I can't tell you, this is probably one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to the solar industry, is that I believe there's not enough transparency for the families. Solar is a relatively new product. It is a new service, right? And a lot of families are still catching up to understand how it truly works. And the last thing that you want to do is go into something and not understand who you're doing business with. Team, I can't tell you how many families I've spoken to, right, that they say, yeah, I went solar with a company. They don't have no idea what the name of the company is. They don't have no idea what program they're utilizing. They have no idea the name of the person that came to their house or got on the phone with them or on the Zoom call. It sounded good at the time. Maybe they made an emotional decision, but they're not truly clear on what it is that they're getting on their roof, right? You want to make sure like, hey, for example, if I have a power purchase agreement, does this have an escalator? Does it not have an escalator? Basically, am I going to be paying a fixed rate, or is it going to be increasing over time? Right? What happens if I pay off the system soon? Can I pay off the system soon? Right? Hey, not everybody qualifies for the 30% tax credit, right? It might end up being that you're in a situation where, hey, you don't pay enough taxes. Maybe you're on disability. Maybe you're on a low income, and they need to be transparent that the numbers they're giving you, especially with a loan, it may not be your true cost of solar, because you may not qualify for the 30% tax credit, which again, very important to utilize and take advantage of. If there's a discount available, I suggest you take advantage of. But most importantly, make sure that you arm yourself with the right information. I can't tell you how many times I've just seen either online or I've seen, speaking to people where they'll explain and they'll jumble, and it can get very confusing. So please make sure that any questions that you have, make sure that you can see it documented. Make sure that you can read the fine print, right? Make sure that you can trust the person that is giving you this information, whether that is through reviews, whether that's through, other people that have gone solar with them, right? Their reputation, all those things are very important, because look, full transparency, right? We're talking about it, right? But most of the people that are in the solar industry today that I see, they probably were not in the solar industry 2 years ago, right? They're probably not going to be in the solar industry 2 years from now. So get an opportunity to see how long they've been in the industry. Have they been hopping around from company to company, right? Those are typically bad signs or signs that the person is relatively new. Not that there's anything wrong with that, right? But you just want to make sure that you understand exactly who it is that you're dealing with, because when there's a problem, right, you want to make sure that somebody is there to be able to answer the phones. So, red flag number 4, right, team? They don't have no licenses or reviews, right? One of the things I love speaking to families, and we mentioned it before, is when they tell me, well, they're going solar with the company, but they have no idea who they are. The person doesn't have any reputation. They don't have no licenses, which I'm very happy that more and more states are requiring accountability, not just for the sales rep, but for the installers as well, right? They're requiring that these people do get licensed before they can use any kind of financing or any kind of PPA product. You want to make sure that that person is somebody reputable. Again, you want to check what their reviews are. You want to see what their reputation is like. You want to see how long they've been in business, right? At the end of the day, right, team, solar is a construction project, right? So you want to make sure that this company understands how construction works, especially with the fact that in solar, things are changing all the time. So you want to make sure that they're able to be up to date. They've done work in your area. They got a proven track record. They've been able to answer your questions correctly. They've been able to make sure that they can shine a light on any kind of concerns or doubts that you might have, right? And if they're hesitant or they're giving you a very simple, like, brush off answer, that's a red flag, right? It's like, hey, maybe let's continue doing our research. So now moving on to red flag number 5, unrealistic savings projections. Guys, I can't tell you how many times I've spoken with families where I will do a proposal and I might be saving them maybe 10, 20%. That would be a good number. Sometimes, maybe 30%, depending on their site. And they said, well, another company offered me half of that. And I'm like, well, how is that even possible, right? You want to be very wary of unrealistic saving projections, right? Remember, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. So make sure that when you're comparing, look at how many kilowatts they're giving you for your production. And on your utility bill, I like to empower families, right? This is why we're here, to empower you, right? But make sure that you have an opportunity to take a look at how many kilowatts you consume, right? Because, for example, let's just say hypothetically, maybe you use 5,000 kilowatts a year of electricity, but you got a system that's only producing you 3,000. Well, you're going to be short 2,000, right? So that means that 2,000 kilowatts have to come from somewhere, and that's going to be the utility company, which if that's all you can get and that was properly explained to you, well, you want to make sure that you understand that, like, hey, if I'm financing or a PPA and I'm not getting all the power that I need, I'm going to get a discount on my utility bill, and then I'm going to pay back, the solar, right? Whether it's I'm going to power, maybe you're going to get 70% of your power from your solar and the other 30% from the utility company, right? Not a bad opportunity, but you want to make sure that you understand it correctly, right? Take a look at, what's your sun exposure, right? And don't just look at it, I know when we step outside and we think, well, I feel the sun, so I get a lot of sun exposure, right? Look at all the trees that are around you. Look at the time of the day if you're seeing that shadows are being casted on your roof. If, let's say, your roof is yay high, but you got a tree that's this big, that's going to cost a lot more shade than what you're anticipating. So make sure that you take that into account. Make sure that they show you, like, on the proposal, what the sun exposure or what the horizon report says, right? And the horizon report is designed to show how much sun exposure actually hits your home. Again, make sure to empower yourself, right, team? Look at the system size we mentioned. Make sure that, it's going to be a good enough power that they're going to cover your usage, right? Be wary of that. This is another thing to be very wary of, or a red flag, is companies promising you that they're going to cut down your trees. Listen, guys. Again, nobody does anything for no reason, right? Not saying that it doesn't happen and it can't happen, but when they start to promise you the world, they're going to cut down trees, they're going to replace your roof, they're going to give you new windows, and it's going to, listen, that already sounds too good to be true. Be very careful of companies or sales reps telling you that they're going to do a service that they don't end up doing because they just want to get you to the installation. If they do provide or they do mention any additional services that are going to be done, please make sure that it is in writing, right? And make sure that it is signed off. Make sure that you're aware. Make sure that you're on top of like, hey, what other services are you going to provide? Because let me tell you, most people that tell you, hey, we're gonna cut down your trees or I'm gonna do your re-roof, they're probably gonna subcontract your work, right? They're not gonna do it in-house, right? We do have some companies that do roofing and solar in-house. That's great, but tree removal and roofing and all these other things, most companies, not all, right? Usually, if you can find a local installer and they've been in business for a while, right, they might be able to do some roofing, some construction work, some solar, right? But most companies, they're just going to be there to help you with the solar and they're going to subcontract everything else. So be very aware of that, right? Because, let's just say you go with a company, they say they're going to remove the trees, but then they're really subcontracting it and then they don't have no control over what happens. Then you're kind of left basically in a situation where sure you got solar on your home, but maybe it's not working as optimal as it should be, right? Maybe you're not getting the production that you need. Make sure, right, very important that whatever it is that they told you, make sure that whatever it is that they told you, that it is in writing. Make sure that you understand that if they said, hey, we're going to install 20 panels, make sure that they install 20 panels. And if they don't, please understand why. Emron, thank you so much for the other comment. Basically, like it trimming and cutting will be subsidized along with the solar tax credit. That is a possibility that it can happen. Again, any kind of project that you include in the solar, if you finance it or you pay for it cash, right? Those are the only options where you will see that it will get subsidized by the federal government. You can get the 30% deduction from the total overall cost. But again, I would be very wary of everybody just trying to throw that generality as like, hey, you're going to get a 30% tax credit or you're going to receive these extra benefits when you may not qualify for it. With a PPA, typically they're going to include it in the monthly cost. So if they say, hey, I'm going to do all these things, I'm going to do it for free, nobody's going to do it for free. It's typically going to be included in the monthly cost. So just make sure that you're aware of that. Again, it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It doesn't mean that you can't benefit from it, but you want to make sure that you're highly aware of that being the case. Okay? And then probably the biggest red flag that I would say, besides all the other ones, they're all important, right, is if they don't mention what their maintenance and warranties look like. Right? If they tell you, well, yeah, they have a 25-year warranty, please make sure that typically this is a manufacturer's warranty, which means that the manufacturer of the panels is giving that warranty, but the installer might have only 5 to 10 years. So you want to be you want to make sure that you look at the fine print and make sure that you're aware as to what their warranties are. Sometimes you'll get certain companies that say, well, they'll have a production guarantee. Usually they're guaranteeing anywhere between 85 to 90% of what they're saying the power is going to be produced. But again, you want to make sure that you're very wary of that, right? Because, if let's say you don't maintain the system, right, because they don't have a maintenance policy, or let's say that there's some changes to it, right, that could void the warranty. So just make sure what your warranty covers, right? If somebody tells you, yeah, if a tree falls on it, it's going to be covered by my warranties. It's typically not. That is an act of God, and that's usually something that you're going to want to take in with your insurance company, right, that you insure your home with. So again, if nobody's talking to you about the warranties, if nobody's talking to you about the maintenance policy, please make sure that is a red flag. Sometimes what will happen is that you'll have one company that will do the sales, and then you'll have a completely different company that does the installation. So please make sure that you're understanding who is doing your installation and what are their warranties look like, right? Because if it's a separate company doing the sales and somebody else doing the installation, their message may not align, right? So you want to be very wary of that. You want to make sure that you're paying attention to what it is that they're saying that they do cover, right? Now, again, just to have a quick recap as to some of the things that we went over for today is what to look out for, right? It's clear pressure-free consultation. At the end of the day, this is your home. You're the ones that's deciding how to power your house. So please make sure that you take your time, make sure that you do your due diligence, make sure that you look at a variety of different options when it comes to who should you allow to install solar in your home. Full transparency when it comes to pricing and financing. Make sure that you understand everything. Are you having a PPA? Are you financing the system? Is cash an option, right? You want to make sure that you understand all of that, because whatever maybe has worked for somebody that you know may not be the same thing for you. And things in solar are still evolving. So what probably worked before doesn't mean that it's going to necessarily continue to work, okay? So again, clear, pressure-free consultation, full transparency on pricing and financing. Make sure that they're licensed and that they have reviews, that they have a track record, right? Make sure that they've been in business for a good amount of time. A lot of these companies only do solar, right? So they haven't been in business that long, but if you're dealing with some local installers, they've been probably helping and doing work in the community, and they've added solar as an additional service. So please make sure to do your due diligence and understand the difference between the different companies that you're speaking with, right? Make sure that you're getting a custom design based on your energy usage, right? Make sure that the system that is being proposed to your house, it's to make sure that you get all the power that you need. It's to make sure that the benefits are explained correctly. It's to make sure that it is going to work for you, right? You know, don't look at what your neighbors are doing necessarily, because your neighbors might use different power than what you do. Even though you live literally in the same area, they might have more children, they might use more power, they might like the house cooler, they might like the house warmer. So make sure that the design is a custom fit for you. And then lastly, make sure that you understand their warranty and their post-installation support, right? Because I can tell you guys from my personal experience, most of the people that are coming to you or knocking on your house or, you know, calling your phones, they haven't probably been in solar that long. There are a few of us that have been in it. You know, I feel like a dinosaur in it. But even myself, right? Make sure that you do your due diligence regardless of who you're working with. Make sure that you understand what happens once the system is on your roof. Because believe it or not, guys, this is still new to most families. Most families are still not accustomed to solar. So it is incumbent on us to make sure that we're providing clear, transparent, and in-depth information. So it has been a pleasure being able to, meet with you guys again and being able to add value. At least I hope that I was able to add value. I hope that I can continue to shine light into your solar journey. Solar is a great opportunity. It is a great way to protect your family, but you want to make sure that you do it right. So if you have any questions, please feel free to, shoot us a DM, shoot us some comments, a Facebook Messenger, and we'd love to be able to help you. Thank you so much for those of us that left some comments. It makes the entire stream so much better. It is a pleasure to be able to speak with you guys. I'll see you next week, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care. Thank you.